we'll switch over to like body positivity
Oh,
too,
cool.
and
Okay.
talk about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Like, the health scheme.
Yeah.
Does that sound
Oh
good?
yeah.
All right. Awesome.
I'll go with the flow.
So our mic is live.
Okay.
I think someone's over there. Just gonna give this a couple of minutes before we really get kicked off and started. You've done this a time or two, and then it's like it gets a little bit easier. And I already see some folks on here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon to everyone. Happy Friday, the best day of the week, I believe. And I always like to kick off and reintroduce myself to any of you that may be newcomers onto our segment. Fridays at 1 o'clock is my own kind of series. It's branded as the Self-Care Boss, which is myself. For those of you that don't know about me, I am a 2-time aneurysm survivor. I live with a rare disease, published author of a coffee table book, and also the leader of Self-Care Boot Camp. So I feel like I've earned that title of being a self-care boss. But this series is really focused on health and wellness, and generally we have guests that encompass both. Their business is either something that translates into health, or they themselves have had some significant experience in that world. But every now and then we'll find ones that are particularly or specifically for either health or wealth. Today's guest is going to kind of have a combination of both when I pepper some questions through. So I do want to go ahead and get started, as I generally do, with something throughout the week that I like to share with people. And the last couple weeks have been just a variety of things. And this time I just wanted to share that I finally got an oil change. And I'm so
That light is off in your car.
That light is off in my car. And I had this poll because I was like, I'm sure I'm not the only person that puts this off, right?
No.
And so I had this poll on Instagram. If you don't already follow me on there, you can find me at MS Juliet Abdel. But I asked, are you a on-time oil change person? Are you a much later? And overwhelmingly, it was much later. So I felt really good about myself. Now, the thing that I did not include was how much later it was for them. Can you guess how long it took me to get my oil changed?
Like a year?
Yes.
Yeah.
You were spot on. It was a year later, and I'm glad that I did it when I did, because it was right before the snowstorm.
Oh.
And, you know, everything just freezes up in there, and when you don't have anything in your car, it just makes it so much worse to drive. So this is your reminder to not put off your car's maintenance. It also requires some unconditional love and support, so make sure that you take it in and follow up on all your appointments, whether they're health related or just in your own personal life. Today's guest is a very dear friend of mine, a special guest that I've worked with both personally and professionally. Keelan, let's have you introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, well, hello, happy Friday, like Juliet said, and thanks so much for having me on. It's so nice to spend this hour, whether it's your lunch hour or errand hour or whatever it might be, with you guys. Yeah, I'm Keelan Thomas, and I am a mother and a wife, and then I am a boutique owner. So I have an online women's boutique. And I've had it for about 5 years now, which is just crazy to think that it's been 5 years since I decided to take the jump and be a business owner.
It is. I can't believe it's in 5 years.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We made the 5-year mark.
That is awesome.
Just turned in my taxes, so I feel good about that.
Yeah? Do you really know?
I'm glad it's done.
Everyone's been so bitter about taxes.
I know. Tax
year.
season is just tax season.
Right?
I don't think anybody enjoys. Well, maybe accountants do, because it's like their thing.
Totally. But even them, I feel like they are ready to rip their hair out.
Oh, yeah, they gotta be. I admire them. Like, I'm so thankful for my accountants.
Absolutely.
So every day I'm like, oh, thank goodness. hats for her.
Well, you only share 2 hats. You actually wear numerous other ones. So I'm going to brag about you.
Okay.
You are a community leader. You've served a
Thank
number
you.
of nonprofits.
Yes.
You've sat on the boards from the Westminster Chamber to Colorado Women's Alliance
Yes.
to so many others. And you have focused so much of your time in empowering other people around you and really supporting some causes that are that you're passionate about. So thank you for your service.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank
I was
you.
I was thinking if I wanted to
Say
say it fully, We'll see. But so 5 years, and has the 5 year 2 of them have been COVID.
Yes.
So you were already positioned to kind of be able to run with it, being an online boutique owner. Is that accurate?
Ideally, I mean, I think being a business owner in itself is like you're kind of built to run for anything and expect anything. So COVID was kind of a big shock, but because I was set up to be an online boutique, it actually really helped me cater to the crowd because they weren't able to go out into the stores as much as they usually are. So they were able to just log on to my boutique a little bit more, or scroll Instagram maybe a little bit more than they were when they were at the office.
Yeah,
so,
right. When otherwise they would have been doing something else.
Yeah. So actually, I was able to kind of take COVID and use it to my advantage, which I think every business owner learns. Any kind of downfall or any kind of turn in the market or whatnot, you kind of have to figure out how to spin it to your advantage and to appease your customers where they're at. And so I was able to kind of get a different line going for stay-at-home moms and for athleisure wear, because it's just so much more fun to have a matching jumpsuit than just a t-shirt and your sweats. So that kind of gave me an opportunity to connect more with my customer base, I think. So it's like a blessing in disguise a little bit.
You have hit on so many great points in just that answer alone, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, my ADD is going to get me all over that place. But you're right, you did. You pivoted during that time, and really you thought creatively and innovatively by adding a couple of those lines. One of the things that boutiques generally are known for is that they're not your traditional department stores. You're not going to wear an item and then find, who wore it best scenarios often happen to you, which is pretty cool. But the other thing that's cool about your boutique in particular is that it's not an arm and a leg. So can you talk to people about, you obviously came up with this concept and you did some significant work to really think about what price point should I be looking at, and how did that really come to life?
So I was probably I think a lot of middle something 20-ish year olds, and I had gotten into a career that I loved, and it was an office job, and I had a lot of events to go to, and I had sort of started getting into politics, so there were some other happy hour events, and I just was like, man, I am spending so much money on clothes, and I can't really shop at Forever 21 anymore because I'm not Forever 21, unfortunately. And neither is my body. So I was like, this is crazy that women to feel successful and professional and look good and kind of show off that stylish, I've always been a big accessory, glitter, hence the name of my boutique, girl, and I just thought how could I accommodate that market without women having to spend so much money, or $100 on an outfit every time they needed a new outfit.
Totally.
So that's kind of my initial market, and then clothes have just always been an inspiration to me. I think it's a form of art.
Yes.
And so I was like, you know what, how can I bring my passion and then connect that with women and help their budget and their future and how to make them feel good and look good.
Absolutely. Well, and you're right, and especially with that last statement, because men don't understand this, right? Fashion is so much more than how it just looks. It is how you feel in what you're wearing, which takes me to the health part of this conversation and this new concept that we're seeing around, body positivity and self-love. And can you speak to how clothes can contribute in that, or maybe for the people that don't necessarily feel like they're represented in some of the styles that are out there?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I've learned, especially coming into my 5th year, is that what I like to tell a lot of my customers and a lot of my shoppers is I like to say that size seriously does not matter. And the size of a jean at one boutique could be a totally different size at the next. And it does not equate like your self-worth or your self-value. It's what makes you feel good. It's when you put those pair of jeans on and you don't even look at the number, but you're like, man, like, you know, all those squats I did last night worked out. Or, you know, me like going to the park every day with my babies, or, you know, whatever. Women wear so many hats, like you had mentioned. And I just think that clothes can kind of, you know, wrap them up and make them feel better. And I think if women have like a sense of empowerment and be like, this makes me feel good, whether it's a sweater, whether it's a headband, whether it's your favorite pair of jeans, whatever, if it makes you feel good and you are showing you're showing a little bit of yourself without having to say or do anything really, right?
Yeah, you're spot on. And it's, I know I've experienced this even when I've frequented your boutique. There was a pair of jeans and I was like, ooh, this should not be this tight on me.
And we all do it as women, right? All the time. And you're like, oh, I have to size up, or like, or I always love when I go to a boutique and I'm like, ooh, I gotta size down. Like, I'm gonna keep shopping here.
But or when you finally put in the health and the wellness component and you fit in that, right?
And
like,
you just feel good. Like your body just feels good in clothes, right? Yeah.
Totally. So the name was born partly because you like the glitter, you like the glam.
I do.
But how did you land on Get Garbed? So many people, especially when they're starting out a business, they overthink a name, right? And then they start going, like, you have been in this place, right? And then they end up coming out with something, and sometimes it's really powerful and great, and then other times it's like, man, I wish you had a sounding board or someone to talk to you about how, you know, you shouldn't have to have a couple of minutes to explain what that means.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, it's very less. I mean, I had like a little notebook that I kept like in my car and on me at all times. It was like, oh, this is a cute name. Oh, this is a great name, you know. And I think like what I really wanted to do is I wanted to bring happiness some way, and glitter is, you know, bright and vivacious and reminds us sometimes of like that there's always a silver lining or a shiny spot in our lives. And then grace was really important to me because I want women to show themselves grace, and I don't think that we often do. And especially in the dressing room, I think we have the hardest time showing ourselves grace and giving our bodies love for all that our bodies do. And I know the lighting's not great in the dressing rooms all the time or things like that. And so I was like, there's so many different ways that I think I could bring more power to women through that. And the Garbed is just, it's a very old-fashioned name, and a lot of people often do ask me, what does that mean? I don't even know what Garbed means. Or so that aspect, I think, like I had to sort of get used to explaining. But Get Garbed is kind of completely like taken over, like the hashtag, and people will comment when they post their their outfits. And so that was really important for me, for my customers and my shoppers to feel like they could kind of like latch on to something and make them feel unique and
like
special.
Part of this.
And so that was kind of what Get Garbed. That's when I ultimately was like, okay, I'm going to go with this name, I think.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, and I love that the concept behind grace. I mean, you know the term and everything, but to give yourself that, especially the biggest time that you spend when you're shopping, right, is in
the
dressing room. And you're right, the mirrors are off, the lighting is terrible. You get out of there and you feel
like
terrible.
Icky feeling, and you're like,
You're like, I hate my body, or I hate this.
Or you just don't even go in there. I mean, I'm telling you, like, I was and I'm taller than the average girl, so I normally had to try on things, which I hated. And there was a time in there where I was like, you know what, I'm just not even going to try it on. I'm just going to take it home, and hopefully it works, and if it doesn't work, we'll just figure it out, you know. I was avoiding it so much, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, and maybe that's a deeper sign of what steps you needed to take for your health and wellness or whatnot, you know. I think women, unfortunately, like our health and wellness sometimes gets on the back burner because we're worried about everybody else's.
Oh, you're spot on.
But it's so important, and only until like you can serve that, then can you conserve all these other things in your life, which you're a great representative of.
You're so sweet. Thank you so much.
True.
That feeling. I wish that we conveyed it to very well to people, because it's true. You leave from there, and it takes away from your positive energy and just the overall feeling. And part of being an online boutique is you also avoid the fitting room component,
Yes.
right? Like,
Yes.
so you're seeing everything, you're seeing how it could be presented, and you generally have different models with your clothes and everything so they can see that different representation that's there.
Yes, yeah.
So you were creative not only with the name of your business, you also thought of a hashtag and all these cool other marketing features and everything. So for someone that is thinking about being or is being inspired by some of this conversation today, and they're like, okay, I really do want to jump right in, you know, how long did that take you to realize that you want to really make this a serious venture? You were in politics, you were in, you know, working in office position, right? Like, and other functions that you were doing, but then you finally took the jump over to entrepreneurship. And what caused that or pushed you to do it?
I mean, I think there are a lot of different things that caused it. I definitely have to like give a little shout out to my dad. He owns his own business, and he and my mom built it from the ground up. And so I kind of watched that, and I kind of saw that entrepreneur spirit. And I always kind of was like, you know what, like they work so hard, but like they own it. They own it from the top to bottom. And I was like, I want that, right? Like, and so I kind of knew in the back of my head always that like I was hoping that I would somehow start my own business or do something like that, but I wasn't really sure. And I was it's very scary.
Totally.
And I just was like, I don't know if I'm equipped to do it. I was an English major, like major in business, you know, and I'm in politics, and like do politics and fashion go together? And so then really like I loved the job that I was doing, and day to day, like it just was extremely hectic, and it was a lot of long hours, and my husband and I were starting to think about wanting a family and like what that would look like. And I just thought, you know, on top of going shopping and spending a lot of our budget, or maybe more of the budget than I was supposed to, on clothing, I was like, I feel like there's a market here, and I feel like I could fit in, right? So then I had to obviously sit down and be like, well, how am I going to get the money? What is the startup cost? And so what I really did is I kind of sat down and looked at the different boutiques that I followed, and then I reached out to them. I just
that's awesome.
I reached out and tried to reach out to as many who would listen to me or talk to me or take them out to coffee or, you know, a glass of wine or something, and just I completely picked their brain. And what I loved most from that experience is that there wasn't any of this like competitiveness or like catty women. You know, sometimes like women get that name that like we're catty, but it was totally like, you get it, girl, like you do this, here's this is what I did, don't do this. You know, it was really empowering, and I was like, man, like women can run the world, you know?
Absolutely. That was a great point. We're gonna come right back to that. I just want to remind everyone we're on KUHS Denver with Keelan Thomas Baker Thomas.
Yes.
I almost got that.
No, you're fine.
It's all right. Keelan is the owner of Garbed in Glitter and Grace. She is sharing with us all things entrepreneurial, her startup journey, what that experience looked like. Feel free to not only like and follow our content, but share out this video so others in your network can see that we're live. We also love questions and comments, so if you hop in, type us that question or comment, and we can direct it over to Keelan. So I'm not the only one that's peppering her. I can keep going for hours. I'm like asking her questions. I just love her energy. But if you particularly had a thought, you can also let us know whatever that thought is. Now, Keelan, right before I decided to inject myself with that little spiel of how they can engage with us, you raised a really great point, and that's being a woman-owned business, right?
Yes.
How has that been an obstacle for you, or has that been more of an advantage in your favor?
I think that there are some days where I feel like it's an obstacle, and then there are other days where I'm kind of like, no, like I really want to own the fact that like I'm a woman and I own my own business, and I have a husband who's completely supportive of it and hopes that I can someday be the breadwinner of the family or whatnot. But I think that's the biggest part, and that's like the biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur, is that there are definitely days, and there are definitely sometimes months, and especially in the retail business, where you think, I don't know if this is something that I should have done. Like, what did I get myself into? Or I'm working way more hours than I ever thought like this was possible. Or, you know, there's that self-doubt that gets into your brain. But I think the most important thing is that if you just say like, I did it, right? I started somewhere, and I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do it again. And if I didn't work great yesterday, how can I, you know, you always just have to be ready to change something up, or you know, something like that. And so as a woman, I think that gives us maybe more of an edge, because we're so used to the unreliability of life.
Yes.
And
So
used to
adapting.
and used to being in so many different types of roles.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm embarrassed to say, but it's true, and I want other women to know this. Like when I first started, I was sort of embarrassed that, like, I would be like, oh, I just own a small business online. Like it's no, and I kept saying
downplaying
just
the stuff that you're doing.
I just kept saying just, and I was like, why do I keep saying just? Like, I've curated this whole thing, like,
right.
I was like, why do I keep doing that to myself? And I think it's just that self-doubt and that, like, you're kind of scared to admit that you've done it on your own, and that there is always a possibility of failing, but there's always a possibility of flying too, right? So.
You raised another really good remark, and it was actually something that we talked about 3 segments ago. I want to say we had Wayne in, and he was talking to us, about your mindset and what you feed your subconscious mind, and you recognized what you were feeding yourself without intentionally trying to, right? Like you were downplaying everything that you've put into this, and you've already detailed to us, right? Like you market studied, you knew who your niche was that you wanted to reach and how you wanted to handle it and come up with it creatively, and all of these things that you had put into place, but the only person that was really saying that it wasn't as great or amazing as what it was you. Totally. And that's I know I've caught myself doing that, right? Like a lot of times the doubt comes in from internal. It's not the external people that we have out there.
Yeah. And it's totally just, with your mindset, it's also all about like the power of like words and affirmation.
Yes.
And I've learned that a lot too, like through marketing and creating an Instagram following. People just want to feel a connection, and they want to be heard, and they want to be seen, and they just want to be acknowledged for whatever happened in that day. Like whether they just killed it in a great meeting, or they just got their kid to finally eat their mashed potatoes. I don't know, like
whatever.
They want to be seen.
Success,
right, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that it's important for us as women and as business owners to share that too, and be like, hey, like, I just got my first order from someone in London, or I just got something, something like that. Like, it's okay to share the downfalls and like
and your successes equally, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like you should both, right? Because the world isn't all perfect. Like we don't all have great days. We can have great moments in a day, but then we can have a really cruddy day, right? Like overall, and it's okay for you to have those. It's just how do you pick back up and continue forward. The affirmations was another great piece that you shared. That touches in the area of self-care. So let's do a deeper dive into what that looks like. I know I personally, my mirror that's in my living room is full of sticky notes that tell me all of these amazing things about myself. Sounds so conceited, but it works on those days that I wake up and I'm like, I'm not feeling good, or whatever other thing has piled up on me. So how do you weave in affirmations in your daily life?
Yeah, so I have in my boutique, I have obviously a big mirror, and then I have another smaller mirror that not a lot of that I don't really feature in my stories or anything like that, but I have lipstick that I write on it, and so I change the quote, on a daily or weekly basis depending on what's going on. And I always try to find some sort of inspiring quote, or maybe a Bible verse or something like that to kind of remind myself, when I go. The thing about being an online boutique owner is that it's all through images and it's all through videos, right? So I'm having to portray myself all the time. And so there honestly are days where I'm just I do not feel good about myself. Or I really do not want to take a shower and wash my hair. I mean, things like that. But it's I've got to do it because that's a part of my business. That's a part of my business plan. So seeing those little quotes, and then just always starting my day and being I'm here, I'm thankful, and reminding myself of whatever, even if it's the smallest thing that you're thankful for. Just doing that, I think the power of gratitude is also very important.
Yeah, affirmations and gratitude. If there are any men that are tuned in on this, I'm curious for you to answer this question. And are there times that you put on clothes that you don't feel look right or feel right? I feel like as women, and I will generalize, even though I feel like it's me, but I've learned that, if I feel it, then others do as well, right? Yeah. But there are times that I'll put on an outfit, and the same outfit I put on the next day, right? Or the next week, obviously. It's not like I'm over here trying to rewear my stuff consistently. But the point is, I put it on, and then I'm like, this looks awful, or I look awful in it, right? Or it just doesn't feel right. Like the fabric itself feels heavy, that weirdness that's there. And so those reminders that you're sharing, right? Like having that grace on yourself, but those reminders of gratitude and appreciation for the things that you have really come into play, especially on those days.
Yeah. I mean, and I think about like a lot of the time, like, so obviously, you know, I buy and sell clothes, but there's also like a stylist kind of point of view to it as well. And you and I have worked in that capacity, and I've been fortunate enough to like have a couple people ask me to help style them or something like that. But I think like I think men experience that too. Like I'm a big sports person, and I watch all the sportscasters, and the men are looking snazzy, and
they are.
I promise you, I tell my husband, like when they are like super put together, I can just feel that they're more confident, they're more on, you know, more on their marks. Like I just think that whole concept of like if you feel good and you put time into like how you're showing yourself to the world, like it's gonna naturally give you like a little bit more pep in your step.
Absolutely, you know? That's so funny. That is true. And we have worked together. I love when our styling sessions, because one of the things that you don't see, especially in the area of health and overall wellness, we talked a little bit about the positivity and how clothes make an impact on your mental and just your mindset and your emotion for the day. But when you have a stylist and someone, it's an objective person. It's not yourself.
Yes.
And we're so bad about, you know, we're focused on one particular thing, and in doing that we sometimes short ourselves in the other areas. And you're great about that, because you've given me things before where you've styled me. And I'm like,
I've seen your face, and you're like, I'm not wearing that.
It's true, but then
we all do it, right?
And then it works and it fits, and then that feeling, right? Like I can rock this.
Or
that is
totally
another rewarding feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like, I think probably one of the most fun things about my job is that I get to have all different ages and types of women come in, and they can totally, like for an example, I have these neighborhood women, and they're so great, and they're probably all over the age of 60, right? They're retired, like they're just living their life. They have like weekly happy hours, like they're just the cutest. And they will text me and they'll say, hey, can I come over and shop? And you know, I have like a little warehouse type of thing in my house, and one of the older ladies came down and she was like, what is this? Like, it's a one piece. And I was like, it's a romper. And she was like, a what? And I was like, it's called a romper. I was like, it looked great on you. And she was just adamant that she could not wear something like that, whatever. She kept calling it a romper, and I was like,
romper.
I promise you. And so I made her put it on, and she looked adorable. Like, it looked great. She felt good about it, and like now, you know, in the summer months, like I see her wearing it almost every day.
Yeah.
And it's just like so rewarding to me, but also like I'm so grateful that like someone is willing to like entrust that I am telling them the truth, right? Like.
Yeah, those are two more great points. So the first being is, you know, and it's more of a question too, is your clothing, as you were sharing, you know, it touches all ages. Like it touches people that are teens, they're in their 20s, they're that professional that's starting, you know, it even touches those that are, you know, a lot more seasoned or progressed in their life, right? So how do you continue to maintain that image and brand, right, when the society might be pulling us somewhere else, right? I had a girlfriend, she posted about this, and I was like, oh my gosh, here's the boutique that you need. But she posted about this, and she was like, oh my gosh, I just gave birth a couple years ago, I had left the workforce, and then I come back in, and she's like, it's either you have to be a skanky person, right, or you have to be completely hobo,
right?
And she's like, and nothing is the same anymore, and you have items that kind of transcend those things. So how do you push past?
I will tell you that I feel like every year I've gotten a little bit better at it, and I definitely think it's hard to know what everybody is going to like, and at some point you kind of have to stop thinking about that and pleasing everybody, which is very hard for a self-proclaimed people pleaser. But what you have to also realize is like, what makes you feel good? What do you want to go and find when you go into a place? What is going to set somebody apart? Like different things like that, and just like catering to like in every woman's body, and that like once again, women, we wear so many hats, but then we also go through so many different phases. Our bodies are capable of so much, and they're changing always. And so you kind of I try to really find clothes that are always going to be flattering and highlight like the feminine body, and then I do, of course, like bright colors and like, you know, frills
They
and
are
like things like that.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and unique. Like, I want you to feel like you bought something and no one else is gonna show up to work that day and have the same sweater or you know, something like that. So that for me is really important, and that's what I try to focus on. And I mean, like, I probably am shopping like 6 hours of every day. You know, like it's just always on there. I get In Style magazine and follow the style bloggers to kind of see what the pulse is, but then how can I bring that to, you know, the everyday woman and not just, you know, Julia Roberts or whatnot, you know.
Totally, yeah. So for those of you that are curious about kind of getting your business started, Keelan shared a number of things that she's done, from her own market research where she's picked others' brains to following and seeing the latest trends and continuing research. So you've been around for 5 years, but you haven't stopped there. You've continued to absorb what are those trends that are out there, what are the things that people are needing, and pivoting and adapting by adding those different lines. And your clothes are interesting because, you know, clothes speak, and yours generally talk, whether it's the frills or the sparkles or like the looser. And so, you know, back to your point of just sharing, right? Like that you look for things that are unique. You know what you want to fill in the market, and you're working hard to fill that particular need. And as a business owner, that's sometimes can be a challenge, right? Like you see so many, I'm sure, styles that are out there.
Yeah.
So how do you stay on that train of thought, right? Like every time that you do see something, right, that it doesn't align with the brand or the vibe that you're trying to create, how do you say no to that, right? And then keep going.
Yeah, I think that is, like, you hit on something. Like, branding is so important, and especially in today's world where everything is sort of on the internet. Everybody has an Instagram. Everybody's wanting to be an influencer or whatnot. Like, it's a very saturated market, and how to break through that market, I think, is probably like a daily question that, you know, I ask myself as a business owner, especially as I'm, you know, mostly online. But I think branding is where you always have to come back to that. Is what is my brand? What am I trying to represent? What's kind of like the passion behind like what I'm curating, and does this sweater or does this certain style that's in right now that's going to be out in, you know, 2 months, does that fit it or does it not? And then also just really knowing your customer base and really knowing. One of the things I learned from an app called Boutique Hub, which is a great app if anybody is looking to open their own boutique. But they talk about how it's very easy to cater to a certain type of your customer, and how you need to cater to all of your customers. So not just the person that buys all the time from you, but also that person who bought one time from you and might buy it from you again. And so that's what, anytime I like officially add to my cart and, you know, check out from any of the wholesalers that I use, like I make sure, you know, I look at my like Instagram and I make sure it's going to look good on there. You know, I go down and I look at my clothes that I've curated. And it's very important to me to make sure I stay on brand. And so if something's a little bit off, you know, I have to really think about it. And then, you know, there is an opportunity to say, hey, like, I'm going to start a different line, or I'm going to be adventurous and kind of maybe take a net risk on this, and maybe it won't work out, but I'll advertise it as something different. Or, you know, there is always that opportunity. And I think the waiting until something feels like just right is where like we can get ourselves in trouble, because you just never do it.
You talk yourself out by sitting on it for so long, right?
Totally.
And another comment that you said, and this is often, you know, I see this even in chamber, right? Like I always tell people, we're not everything to everyone, but we're something to someone, right? And to some degree, you just covered that perfectly, right? By sharing that there could be one particular style or one particular item that draws someone, but you want to continue to be providing to them. And I think that's something that's different from others that I've met, right? Like they're like, well, I don't want to post this out or push this out because it's not what I carry, right? Well, that's not going to get people in the door.
Right.
Like if you don't have something that's of interest, then they're not even going to go on and check you out and see what you're all about.
That's what's so hard too, is like the tendency, like the perfectionist or the A-type personality, which I think everybody has a little bit in them. It's very easy to be like, this is what I do, this is how I've done it, so I'm going to keep doing it this way, right? But unfortunately, like, that's just not how business works. Like, times change. Like, we're in an ever-growing and quick-paced world, and it's kind of like you've just always got to be willing to say, okay, how do I stay true to myself and what my business model is, but how can it kind of acclimate to what's happening in the daily lives of other people.
Totally. Yeah, that's spot on. So I think it would be nice for us to tell people where they can find you, because we've talked about Instagram, we've talked about the online. So let's share with them a few ways that they can connect with you socially.
So of course, like, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'd love for you guys to follow me. And then I also have my own website, so it's www.garbedinglittergrace.com. And you can order everything through there. And then I also, if you follow me on social media, I also try to do a lot of pop-up shops. And one of the great things I love to do is pairing with other small businesses and other entrepreneurs. And so I've kind of worked with like wineries and breweries, because who doesn't love to sip and shop at the same time?
It goes hand in hand.
Yeah, it really works. Yeah, it really works great.
To touch on the body positive, you're going to feel fabulous.
Right, you feel so good after that third glass of wine, for sure. But yeah, I try to do some of that, and actually I'm hoping to this summer be at the Parker Farmers Market. So that's a totally new thing for me, but I'm hoping to get into that kind of niche and see if there's a whole nother base of customers and shoppers that I could connect with.
Yeah, that's smart, and that goes back to what you were sharing earlier, is you're constantly learning and you're constantly trying things, because you may try that and it's going to be awesome and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a market that I need to continue to, but then it could also be, and hopefully it's not, but it could also be a bust, right? And you're like, I shouldn't continue to put my time and energy on that, for sure.
Yeah, that's like, I think everybody experiences that in their life, like where they're putting their energy, and are they getting anything back, or is their bucket just completely empty? And you know, that works the same way like with financial and with your business. Like, is this financially prudent, or is this just something that you're doing to make your business seem like it's doing well, or you know, but it's actually not. Right.
Yeah, so it's this it kind of touches on boundaries, right? And creating creating those boundaries to say no on the things that aren't working, and yes to the things that are, or being flexible with the things that aren't working, and seeing how you can get it to work in the right way. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like for me specifically, when I first started, I was sort of like, I'm just going to say yes to everything. Right? I'm just going to do it all, and I'm just going to like, if it's, you know, this much money to get into this market or to this fair or whatever, like I'm just going to do it, you know. And then you kind of realize like, okay, like, you know, being a yes person is great, but then you also want to kind of think about like it, like you were talking about earlier, like, is that really in line with my market base? Is that really in line with what I want to do? Or can I pick and choose? And do I have the right as a business owner to say like, no, this isn't worth my time, but this is, you know. And I think starting to get that confidence in saying like, I'm my own boss, and not having someone to kind of sit down with and be like, so how do you think I did? Like, do you remember, you know, like
going back for a review.
Right? Which is the hardest part, I think, about being your own business owner, is because you don't have anybody to sit down and say like, you did so great today, or like, hey, not a great area, to, you know, or something like that. So learning how to like stop and take notice of like where you've been and where you are going, and like what you're doing, I think is really important. And I maybe don't do as much as I should, but I try to.
Well, this is a good reminder and refresher for you to take your own advice.
I guess so. Right. Yeah.
So I have been peppering you since we started with all these random questions that have thrown your way. Are there other things that you want to share with anyone that's looking to get started, or someone that might be interested in, you know, the how-to mechanics of being an entrepreneur, or who feels like, I'm so overwhelmed because I wear all of these hats? And you know, you shared a little bit, you wear other hats, you're also a sibling. I mean, you've got so much, and sometimes I feel like we feel like I need to wait for the right time, that I don't have as much, right?
Yes. I think that having a support system is so important. Having like a group of women also that like can empower you, and that like you see them doing their own things, and you supporting them in what they're doing and going after their dreams, they're going to support you in that as well. So I think that's really important. And then there's never going to be the most ideal time. Like everybody will tell you that when, you know, when you're thinking about having a baby, or when you're thinking about moving, or when you're thinking about going after this, you know, job that you want or whatnot. Like, it's never going to be perfect, because nothing really is perfect, right? It's what we make it. And so I think if it's stirring in you and you're thinking about it more than you're not thinking about it, and it's a way for you to monetize things, but also like live out your days like being passionate about what you're doing, then I think, you know, it might be time to consider asking the hard questions and seeing, you know, seeing what it might take. And, you know, for me, like, I was fortunate enough and I took my dad out and was like kind of Shark Tank pitched him and was like, hey, like, I'm going to start this on the side, and I think this is what I need to start out, and, you know, this is what I, like, the interest that I'll pay you back in, and, like, all of those kinds of things.
Good for you.
And so he kind of helped me create a business plan, and he invested in my business, and, you know, here I am 5 years later, completely on my own and everything. So, but I did it, right? I was like, you just got to do it, like.
That's awesome. I had no idea about
that. That is,
so thank you for sharing that. How bold of you.
Oh, yeah. I was like really wine and dine him. I took him to Texas Roadhouse.
Oh, you did? Yeah. The free rolls.
Right. I was like, yeah, you can get a steak. That's fine. Like, yeah, you can have another beer. It's great.
The support blocks are so important. We've said that before a couple of times on this segment, and having those people that are supportive of you, but then also we've given them the flip point of not having those people and not letting that hinder you, because sometimes you know, you have been blessed with a very supportive you know, network that you have, your husband, your father, you know, which is all great, but you also have some others that have people that aren't as supportive, and that shouldn't stop you, right? Like, you still have family that's adopted, you still have a passion and a purpose, and if you have like a dream or a thought, then it's for a particular reason.
Absolutely.
Right?
I totally agree with that. Yeah, there's always going to be a naysayer. There's always going to be somebody who isn't going to think like you're the cat's meow, or isn't going to like your clothes, or you know,
that's awesome.
I mean, there's always, and that's a hard thing, right? Like, to say, like, to put something out there and be like, someone might not like this, like, is really hard to think about.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of powerful, because you can say, you know what, they can say I don't like it, but I'm still doing my thing. Like, I'm doing something that I'm proud of and that I love every day, and I'm making money at it. So all the more, you know,
reason to keep going.
Right.
Yeah, for every naysayer, there's one that's agreeing with you and cheering you on. And I think sometimes it's so easy for us to just hear that negative and have that, again, it complements some of the thinking that we may wake up in the morning one day and have just for no reason, right? Like our mood is that, or something triggered that, or whatever other reason. And so we hold on to those negative moments, and you know, misery likes company, and that starts bringing you down. But for every negative, there's a positive, and there's a positive purpose behind it.
That.
For sure. I don't see any comments that are out there, folks. I think we're just killing it with questions.
I guess
which is
so.
Awesome,
well, you're asking
me
the right questions.
You're doing so well with talking to them about this. So one other thing that I did want to mention, and this is just like a soft plug for your brand and everything like that, but you continue to come up with these creative things, right? Like when you shared about your baby line that you added, and your maternity line and everything. That was from your own personal experience with being a mother and finding stylish things out there, and that's been a challenge, right?
Yes, a very big challenge. I think, again, like as women, like, our lifestyle is changing all the time, and then it changes even maybe when we don't want it to change, and how can we dress for that, or how can we prepare for that. And so I've kind of been like sharing my personal life in my business life. So when I, you know, 2 years ago when I was pregnant, I was like, man, like, there are really not that many cute maternity clothes out there.
They're not.
Like, they're not. They're kind of like what you thought, like they're either really frumpy, or just like totally crazy expensive. And it was just like, I'm only going to be pregnant for 9 months, like, ideally, right? Like, this seems crazy to spend this much money, you know? And so I was kind of like, what can I where there's a hole that I can fill, and a void that I can fill. And then, you know, the Mama and Me matching stuff is so popular right now.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It's a very saturated, so it's a very hard market to get into, but again, it's just like meeting my customer base where they are. And I was fortunate enough to start in my mid-20s, and so I've sort of had this group of women who've been following me in their mid-20s, and then, you know, now they're going through motherhood and all of those different things. Nice. So it's been actually really fun to kind of like live vicariously through them, and vice versa. And clothing can help you do that. I think clothing can connect you in so many different ways.
In so many ways. And you're right, the relatability is a big part too as a business owner. You know, being able to relate to your audience and the customers that you're trying to bring in, I think also feeds into your business goals and your overall success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think like it's easy to, from being on an online point of view, I think especially when I first started, I thought that everything had to be like so perfect and so curated and like so filter on point, you know. And then I sort of realized like I wasn't actually connecting with as many people as I wanted to, and I wasn't breaking through that kind of that barrier, the algorithm on Instagram, and I was like, what is going on? And I think it's just I was not being completely transparent and authentic, and I was scared to like sort of let them know that like some days like I didn't feel great about myself, or some days like I didn't like the way this fit me, but I loved the way it fit my friend, or you know, different things like that. So I think once I started being more honest and real, then I think I was able to connect a little bit more with my base.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. It's you are running on that hamster wheel like endlessly. If all
it's
you're
pink,
looking
though.
at, right? It's pink. There's sparkles.
Yes, it's pretty. Okay, it's the prettiest hamster wheel you've ever seen.
Right. The leg is still like moving, and the whole body's hanging out at that point, right? But especially with Instagram and social media that's out there, right? Like sometimes you get in this habit that you're constantly trying to keep up with the trends in your content. You're trying to do all these things, and algorithms change, and things that you can't control, those variables. And so continuing to push out and continuing to do it in a way that's that sends a message of continuity to people, rather than, you know, going on and off so infrequently because you don't have the perfect post or the perfect image, falls short, I think, in people's mind. There's so much that's out there, like you were saying. People are looking through, and they're constantly 6 hours that you're shopping. I can tell you, I'm looking for a good amount of time online, right? Yeah. And so I think that's a big part of it, is when you're not making that noise or showing up, regardless of how you're showing up, then you're being forgotten and being left behind.
Yeah, there's like one of my good friends, she always likes to say, she's a big networker, and she likes to say, like, if you're not talking, then neither is your business, right? So it kind of makes sense. Like, if you're not willing to open up and share what's going on with your day-to-day, like, business, then your business maybe isn't, you know, seeing the type of people that you want to see or whatever. Yeah,
that's a great piece of advice that I'll probably leave them with, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We're always on here on Fridays at 1 p.m. Mountain Time here on KUHS Denver, and every other week or so I generally have either a health or a wealth guest. I've had Keelan with me, and she's been so gracious with talking a little bit more about her online boutique business that she's been killing it with for over 5 years now, which is so exciting. You can find her on Instagram, you can find her on Facebook at Garbed in Glitter and Grace, and then she shared with you her online boutique as well. Keelan's always someone that's interested in helping and mentoring and helping even just style you and just overall feel good. And this energy that you see is what she's all about. Like, this is not just like, she did not just shoot up and come in here. Like, she is like this all the time. And so for those of you that are interested in business or starting out or were kind of hesitant, I hope this inspires you to pursue your dreams. Yeah, like it did for Keelan. And I also wish you a great rest of your Friday. Now, I do want to end on this, and I feel like I've been ending on this consistently, but I shared with people on how they can donate for the earthquakes that had taken place in Turkey. Last week, I had gone out to a candlelight vigil that was out there, just kind of in, just as a reminder of those victims and everything. Well, they had another third earthquake that happened within this last week, which is always crazy. But TASCO, which is the group that is locally here, an American group of the Turkish organization that's here, is also doing a number of other events over the next several weeks, and I encourage you all to consider helping in those fundraising efforts, whether it's donating online, attending those events, or just hitting the share button, because sharing information can be just as powerful as taking out your credit card and swiping it. So with that, I wish you all a terrific rest of your Friday, and I think we're going to go ahead and round out so I can take some photos with you.
All right, let's do it.
Before the end of the day. Thank you all. Look at you, like